This is your Barbados Today morning news update for Friday, May 31st, 2019. Thanks for joining us. I'm Carol Williams. Fragmentation is suicide. That strong warning from a former regional leader at an event in Barbados as CARICOM remains divided on Venezuela. Jamaica's PJ Patterson was clear in his position, stating that all CARICOM leaders needed to speak with one voice on the matter. It is seen as a rebuke of the positions taken by the Prime Ministers of Jamaica, St. Lucia, Haiti and the Bahamas, who met with U.S. President Donald Trump in March and have since sided with the U.S. in its opposition to the Nicolas Maduro regime.
In St. Kitts last year, CARICOM leaders arrived at a common position consistent with the purposes of the treaty that repudiated external intervention in Venezuela's internal affairs. We expect all our 14 leaders to act in accordance with that decision and not to veer off in support who have a contrary view, whether in the halls of the OAS or the corridors at Mar-a-Lago. The Caribbean, we at the OAS are 14 nations strong. We have the voting power. Once we assert it as a single bloc to protect and safeguard our sovereign control, the Caribbean will prevail.
The former Jamaica leader also gave some advice to Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley on the issue of regional integration.
The failure of the federal experience has left a deleterious impact in the course of creating regional trust and confidence. We still suspect each other, and that has impeded us in tackling certain stubborn problems which face the region. I mentioned but two: regional travel and transportation, and of course the central issue about which Sir Sridhar spoke, which emanated from a recommendation of his report, the whole issue of governance. And I say, Prime Minister Mottley, with the utmost benefit of experience, whatever you do, CARICOM will never achieve its objectives unless you have within it somebody, some group, some identifiable center that is responsible for ensuring that decisions, when taken, are not forgotten but acted upon.
Patterson was addressing the launch of his book titled My Political Journey at the Sajiko Cahill School of Business and Management last night. Don't drag out negotiations with external creditors, so says economist Jeremy Stephen, who says the administration could end up in court over its recent decision to force the hand of creditors. Stephen, a UE lecturer, was responding to the release of yet another international media report, which suggests that a committee of creditors plans to reject government's most recent debt exchange proposal. We get more from Karim Smith.
A Bloomberg report published on Thursday morning quoted a spokesperson from the creditors as predicting that government's decision to force its offer on them would be highly detrimental to the country. At issue, the article reported, is a disagreement over how much of the burden should be carried by external creditors. According to the report, the creditors' latest offer would have allowed government to reach its debt target a year later than it wanted. Creditors also accused the Mia Mottley-led administration of trying to force severe restructuring terms on creditors to meet its debt targets. Stephen compared the government's stubborn stance to that of the previous administration, which downplayed the serious implications of numerous downgrades by international debt rating agencies and warned the stance could land them at the International Court.
A resolution has to be passed. I don't know how. but it seems as if some kind of that both parties will not agree. And if it's the case that government forces the restructuring on them, I can see a court case coming out of this. Just like Argentina, and Argentina to this day has never recovered in terms of being able to attract international investment and foreign dollars to afford their imports based on such things that fell apart in the early 2000s. So it's something to be very watchful of at this time.
Barbados Today has since reached out to Prime Minister Mia Mottley's press secretary Roy Morris for comment on the recent developments. However, up until press time, a response had not been given. Kareem Smith for Barbados Today.
It's still early, but vendors at Pelican Village are already giving a thumbs up to the newly introduced Festival Fridays. The initiative, which seeks to stimulate activity at Pelican Village in Bridgetown, was introduced 2 Fridays ago and runs from 4 p.m. to midnight. Some vendors who opted to speak off camera to Barbados Today say they've already seen improved business. There were also some recommendations on the way forward.
I would think it's an initiative that can work. Only problem that I have is that you should spread it out. You know, the big village is a big area, right? And also when it comes to entertainment, this is my view, that you ain't gonna you bring plastic bag, you bring Gabby, whoever you want to bring, you bring. But it should be a stage for younger artists.
Festive Friday, we saw the tourists came out, locals especially. I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of locals that came out to this. It was awesome for us. People spent money. It was really great, man. I can't find words. It was a success to the utmost.
It's very good. It was very successful. You know, if it could go on for a long time, it would help us a lot.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To St. Lucia, a human rights advocate and attorney at law is calling for an independent investigation into the shooting death of a 17-year-old secondary school student. Neither the Ministry of Education nor the school have commented on the incident. However, the fact that the student was in the presence of his teacher has raised some concerns, as we hear in this report from HGS News Force.
Human rights advocate and attorney at law Mary Francis has called for an independent investigation into the shooting death last week of 17-year-old entry post-secondary school student Arnold Joseph. There are still many unanswered questions surrounding the shooting death of the student on the night of Wednesday, the 22nd of May at about 10:30 p.m. The student was a passenger aboard a white Mitsubishi Lancer car, along with his teacher and the teacher's brother on that fateful night. Police say that the car was being driven recklessly, and the driver of the car failed to heed their orders. The lawmen say they fired at the vehicle near the intersection of Chaussee and La Panse roads. The teenager was killed, and the teacher's brother was shot and taken to hospital for treatment. Francis says the circumstances surrounding this latest fatal shooting are still unclear, and that it is important to learn lessons from impacts and consider the consequences. Making reference to the Jamaican Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, she says St. Lucia needs to seriously consider similar independent bodies in investigating police shootings.
And finally, police have arrested the captain of a vessel that collided with a towboat in Budapest, resulting in at least 7 deaths. The 64-year-old Ukrainian national was held as a suspect over the reckless misconduct in the waterborne traffic leading to mass casualties. The boat carrying South Korean tourists sank 7 seconds after the collision during a rainstorm on Wednesday. We get the details from France 24.
Water was flowing so fast when the boat capsized Wednesday night, passengers who went overboard were quickly carried away. The boat collided with another vessel and sank near the Margate Bridge. Rescue teams managed to save people several kilometers downstream.
Some were lightly injured, while others were in a critical condition.
17 rescue teams with divers tried to save as many people as possible in the dark. 33 passengers and 2 crew members were on the boat that could reportedly carry up to 45 people for this type of cruise. Were weather conditions too bad to sail? The tour operator that organized a trip for the tourists from South Korea says conditions were adequate.
At the time, the water level was high, but other cruise boats were operating as usual, as well as our boat.
The South Korean president set up a crisis cell to monitor and help rescue operations while supporting victims and their families.
And that's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook. And sign up for breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM. I'm Carol Williams. Have a good day.